Major scales, absolute piece of cake. Everybody understands major scales. But what about those gnarly minor scales? What's the difference between a natural minor, melodic minor, harmonic minor, but you can use a Dorian minor? What's Aeolian? All this stuff can really fry your mind. On this week's free online saxophone lesson, I'm going to unpack everything you need to know about minor scales. I'm going to clear it all up, even why classical musicians play them up and down differently, which has always thrown me off. And you are going to learn, more importantly, which context to use which scale when you're improvising. So without further ado, we're going to get behind the camera and I'm going to clear all this stuff up. But there's a great resource I want you to grab, which is a free PDF. And use the link that you can see there. I've written out a minor scales cheat sheet for you, which is going to be a real great resource. And it clears up all the 4 main minor scale types and the 5 main contexts in which you're going to use those minor scales and which scale to choose. It's a really valuable resource. So go down, click the link. You just got to fill in your email and you'll get the free PDF, print it off and follow along as we clear up these minor scales once and for all. Okay, let's talk about minor scales. First of all, I'm going to show you the 4 main minor scales. Then we're going to talk about the context in which you would use those scales, because that is the all-important thing. And it can be a little bit tricky, a little bit confusing. So let's try and clear this all up for you. Starting with the very basics. So what is a minor scale? Well, in its most basic form, a minor scale is a major scale with a flattened third. It's the flattened third scale degree that makes a major scale a minor scale. So for example, here is a simple C major scale. If you flatten the third, that is what gives you the minor sound. And we're going to talk about the top half of the scale just shortly. But here is the big revelation when you're trying to work out all these 4 different minor scales. The first 5 notes of every minor scale are the same. Now, there are lots of different minor scales, minor, flat to Phrygian, but for the 4 main scale types that we're addressing today, the first 5 scale degrees are all the same. There's only 7 notes in the scale, so almost all the notes are the same apart from 2. Okay? All those notes are the same for all of them. C, D, E flat, F, and G. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5. Now, whenever we say flat this or natural that or flat the next thing, what we really mean is flat 3. And the bit that's missing that everybody doesn't say is compared to the major scale starting on the same note. So we've got 1, 2, flat 3, and it's flat compared to the same note in a major scale starting on the same note. So in C major, you get an E natural. In C minor, you've got an E flat. That's a flattened third. So, hopefully, you're already thinking, oh, great, there's only 2 notes to sort out, and that's the 6th note and the 7th note. So let's look at the different scale types. The melodic minor scale has a natural 6 and a natural 7. Exactly the same as C major. Nothing is flattened. So with the melodic minor scale, we've got our bass 5 and then a natural 6, natural 7, and then obviously you're back to your root to start again. That makes the melodic minor the most sort of uplifting minor scale, if there is such a thing. And, you know, quite often you get that minor 6 sound like that. So that's the melodic minor. Used a lot in jazz, and don't worry, we're going to get to that later. Right, let's now move on to the harmonic minor. Now, the harmonic minor is the same, but you flatten the 6th. So you've got your usual 5. Now this time, the 6th note is flattened, but you've still got the natural 7. Okay, that's the harmonic minor. Flat 6, natural 7. Now that gives it, because there's a big leap between the flat 6 and the natural 7, that gives it a kind of, you know, like more of a kind of Spanish, almost Arabic type sound. So that's quite a different sound from the melodic minor. The harmonic minor sounds like this. Okay. Quite a spooky sound that, the harmonic minor. So far, melodic minor, natural 6, natural 7. Harmonic minor, flat 6, natural 7. Let's move on to the next one, and you're soon going to see we'll get the full set. The next one is a Dorian Minor. So we've got the first 5 notes, but this time we've got a natural 6 and a flattened 7th. And the Dorian minor scale is actually a mode of the major scale. It's the second mode of the major scale. I'll put a link in the description for my video on modes, which means that if you were playing what I'm playing, which is C minor, I'm actually using a B flat major scale starting on C, okay? There we go. Now Dorian minor, when we use Dorian minor, you're going to find out later, but that's got the natural 6, flat 7. Now to complete the whole set, we've got the natural minor scale, which is also called the Aeolian minor scale. So we've got our usual 5, but this time, you guessed it, you got flat 6 and flat 7. Now this is another mode of the major scale. It's the 6th mode of the major scale. So while I'm playing C minor Aeolian or C natural minor, I'm actually playing the notes of E flat major starting on C. And that has a particularly kind of melancholic, it's got a very particular sad sound to it, the natural minor. So there are your 4 main scales. Let's go over them one more time. Melodic minor. First of all, you've got your bass 5 notes, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5. They're the same for all the scales. Then melodic minor has natural 6, natural 7. Harmonic minor has flattened 6th, natural 7. Dorian minor has natural 6, flattened 7th, almost bit my tongue off there. Natural 6, flattened 7. And finally, the natural minor has flat 6 and flat 7. So between those 4 scales, we've got all the variations of natural flattened 6th and natural and flattened 7th. Let's now talk very briefly about the history of these minor scales and address some of the elephant in the room questions that most people have. Let's start with the natural minor scale. This is the scale that you get if you just went to the relative minor of your major key. Like, let's say we're in E flat major, we go to the relative minor, which is C minor, and we just do the same scale. That's the scale you get. Now, the problem with this scale, as most people will tell you online, is that your 4 chord, in this case it would be F minor, your 5 chord G minor, you've got no strong dominant to take you home, to take you to create that tension that you only get when you've got the leading note which goes back to the root. So the problem with writing songs in the Aeolian mode, or aka the natural minor, is, you know, there's not really a very strong pull from 5 to 1. That's 5 to 1, but it's nothing like 5 to 1 with a natural 7. So that's why, you know, the harmonic minor was, I say invented, I doubt it was like invented, just like somebody invented a Hoover. But the harmonic minor appeared to give us that leading note to go back. That gives us a chord 5 in our minor key. Okay? But the big problem with the harmonic minor scale is this minor third leap between the 6th, the flattened 6th scale degree, and the natural 7th. That is a big jump in the scale. So although we've given ourselves the nice dominant tonic relationship, we're stuck with this weird thing when we're writing melodies and when we're playing scales. So in order to combat that, what composers started doing was using the natural 6th and the natural 7th to give you a nice smooth ramp up the scale. Now you'll hear this in music by Bach and so on. And in classical music, what happens is when you practice your scales, you actually go up the melodic minor scale, because these these natural sixth and the natural seventh give you a nice smooth route up to your tonic. And then you use the natural minor to come down. Now that's got the flattened sixth and the flattened seventh. And what the flattened sixth and the flattened seventh does is it gives you a smooth path down to your dominant note. So that gives you a nice smooth path down there. And on the way up, you use the melodic minor. So that's what happens in classical music. But for the purposes of our, typical jazz theory, we're not interested in the descending version of the melodic minor because it's the same as a major scale. So that's my attempt at explaining why classical musicians go up the melodic minor and down the natural minor, although the truth of the matter is I'm not sure anybody really knows. I've seen a million explanations of it. Now that leaves one thing left, which is the Dorian minor scale, which is a mode of the major scale. And the Dorian minor, again, doesn't have that dominant. It doesn't have the dominant. But what it does have is the nice natural sixth. So you can quite happily noodle away on the Dorian without feeling like you have to resolve somewhere. And that's generally what happens in modal music, but we're going to come to that later. So there's a bit of history about the scales, why we don't always use the natural minor, why we added the harmonic minor with its leading note, and why we've got the melodic minor, so that melodies can flow up without that jerky minor third interval. And then you've got the Dorian minor, which we're going to come to just shortly. Okay, so far so good. Now you know what the four main minor scale types are and a little bit of history about why they evolved from a melodic and harmonic point of view. Now, what scale do you play when you see a minor chord? That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What scale do I use? I can see the chord symbol. Let's say it's C minor. What do I play? Context is everything. I shall repeat that very important point. Context is everything. Let's look at a few different contexts. If it's everything, let's deal with it. Okay, first context we're going to look at is tonic minor chords. That is where your minor chord is the home key. Now in a jazz, we're going to look through a couple of different contexts within the context, but let's say we're in a jazz context. Our home key is C minor. A typical cadence which might get you there is something like this. You've got A flat 13 sharp 11, G7 altered, and then back to C minor. Now the different chord symbols you could have for that tonic key might be just C minor. It might say C minor major 7. Very commonly it'll say C minor 6, or it might even be C minor 6-9 with the 9th and the 6th. All those chord symbols, you will typically use the melodic minor scale. Okay, this is in a jazz context. For a tonic minor, you'll typically use the melodic minor scale. So let me demonstrate this on saxophone. I'm going to play the cadence, which is going to be A flat, 13 sharp 11, G7 altered, then I'm going to hit the C minor, and I'm going to play the melodic minor scale. Now I'll play a C minor 6 chord this time because that's the one that you most commonly get. Okay, so it's going to be something like this. So that's your first option. Now, on some tunes, and this is where it gets tricky because the context is something that you just have to work out for yourself. On some tunes, it might sound better to use the harmonic minor on that tonic minor chord. So let's say your chord sequence is something like D half diminished, and then G7 flat 9, and then C minor. If there's a lot of A flats in the melody of the song already, you might think, oh, actually, I like that flattened sixth of the harmonic minor, that sounds better. So for example, there's D half diminished, and we've got G7 flat 9, and then we go to C minor, but it might sound better like that. And it all depends on what song you're playing. That's it, that's all I can tell. And then experience will guide you if the natural sixth sounds better or the flattened sixth. Now, it could still be one of the same two chord symbols. You can see here that both could be C minor and both could be C minor major 7. However, if your chord symbol specifically has the sixth in it, then you can't use the harmonic minor scale. So if you've got an open-ended chord symbol that doesn't specify the sixth, you can choose. And really, like I say, that just boils down to experience and what you think the song sounds like. So again, let me demonstrate that on sax and you can hear the difference between them. So this is the second line now. This is going to be this progression, and we're going to be using the harmonic minor scale. Here we go. And eventually you'll just have enough experience to work out if you prefer the flattened sixth of the harmonic minor or you prefer the natural sixth of the melodic minor. So that's a tonic minor chord in jazz. Really, it's all about the sixth. If the chord symbol specifies that it's a sixth chord melodic minor, if it doesn't, you can choose between the one that you prefer. Right, let's now move on to tonic minor chords in pop. Now, when I say pop, this is all very broad. You know, you could be using minor major chords in pop just as easily as you could in jazz. But just broadly speaking, for the purposes of this lesson, let's say that in the pop genre, in a minor pop song, very often you have the natural minor scale, which is used, the Aeolian mode. And that kind of sound would be something like this. Sometimes it says C minor, and sometimes it says C minor 7. But typically, the scale will have that A flat in it. And typically, the chord sequence might be something like this. Because if you start playing this note, it jars. You know, it doesn't really sound very good compared to. So let me just play that on saxophone for you. And you can hear the sound for yourself. Here we go. the sort of sound you hear on songs like Englishman in New York that features Branford Marsalis. So pop songs that have got especially chords that feature the flat 6, like the flat 6 major 7, A flat in this case, they will almost always use the Aeolian scale. And again, it's just a question of keeping your ears open and using what sounds good to you. So finally, a tonic minor chord, which is in a modal context. Now, what I'm talking here is songs like So What, Little Sunflower. If they have a minor 7 chord, or a minor 9, or a minor 11 chord symbol, and that chord just is, it's a long drone that doesn't change. There's no functional harmony. Then you're going to be using the Dorian minor. So songs like So What have got this kind of sound, this kind of modal sound. And they'll have that natural 6th. And of course, John Coltrane made a career of blowing on a Dorian scale for hours at a time. So that's this kind of sound. Here we go. See if I can work this out. That's the sound of the Dorian minor, and you often get Dorian minor in funk songs as well. So they're the 4 basic types of tonic minor choices that you would use when you're looking at these scales. Let's recap them one more time. If you're playing a jazz song and you have functional harmony that resolves to a minor chord, for example, like this. If the 6th is specified, you use melodic minor. If it isn't, then you can choose which one you choose, melodic or harmonic. So you could use harmonic or melodic. Number 2, if you have a pop context, and especially where there are songs with the flattened 6th chord and the flattened 7th chord, then you would use your natural minor scale, aka Aeolian. And finally, if you're in a modal context and it says a minor 7, you'll be using Dorian. Now let's move on to the next set of contexts where you have to decide which scale to use on minors. I've got 2 more contexts to cover regarding your minor scale choices. And the first of these, which is number 4, the 4th context we're going to cover today, is a 2 chord in a 2-5-1 cadence. So in this case, we've got C minor 7, F7, B flat. That is a 2-5-1 in the key of B flat. 2, 5, 1. Okay, C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7 is a 2-5-1 in B flat. Now in this context, you would use the Dorian minor, because Dorian minor is the 2nd mode of B flat major, and the key that we're in, the 1 chord, is B flat. This minor chord is functioning within the key of B flat. So we would use Dorian minor, which is a B flat major scale, starting on C. So let's have a quick demo of that. We've got C minor 7. And then we're resolving to the home key, but I'm just demonstrating what you're playing on the minors. Now this is why you have classic bebop licks that use this scale, something like uses the Dorian minor. Okay, and the final context, which I'm going to teach you today, is when your minor chord is a minor 4 chord in a major song. All right, so now we're going to change key. Now we're in the key of G major, because we're using a C minor chord for all this. This is concert pitch, by the way. So G major chord, and then you have this C minor in the song, which is, of course, a beautiful, beautiful sound. It's the sound of yearning, as every songwriter knows. If you're using the main chords of a song, let's say you're on G, C, D, G, D, C, and then this C minor 6. It's an absolutely gorgeous sound, but what scale do you choose? Well, you choose the Melodic Minor scale for this, and and I'll explain why. It's because you have all the notes of G major except for that one flattened note of the C minor. That's what really makes it work, because you're emphasizing the G majorness of the Melodic Minor scale. Now, your chord symbols will either just be a minor, or sometimes you get a minor 6 chord symbol for this context. So here's our G, and then we have a C minor 6. As you can see, it resolves nicely back to the tonic. So let me demonstrate that on sax as well. This is just a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous sound. And there are countless songs that use that 4 minor sound, and the scale you want to use is Melodic Minor, and believe me, it's going to sound really gorgeous. So let's have a final recap of the contexts that we've covered today. Bearing in mind that I've covered 5 contexts, there are many more, but at least these main 5 will get you started. Let's have a quick recap of the contexts and what scales you're going to use. First of all, if you have a tonic minor chord, in other words, a 1 chord, and you're in a jazz context, you can choose between the melodic minor and the harmonic minor. If the chord symbol specifies a 6, then you're going to have to use the melodic minor. If it doesn't, you can choose. If you have a tonic minor chord, which is a 1 chord, but you're in a poppy sort of sound, and you've got the flat 6 and flat 7 chords going on, then you will use the natural or Aeolian minor scale with the flat 6 and the flat 7. If you are in a modal context where the minor 7 chord doesn't move anywhere, then you will use Dorian minor with the natural 6 and flat 7th. If you are playing a 2 chord, a minor 7 2 chord within the context of a 2-5-1, you're going to use the Dorian minor scale, which is natural 6 flat 7. And finally, if you are in a major key, but you're playing the 4 minor chord, then you will use the melodic minor scale to emphasize the majorness of the key that you are in. So I hope that is helpful. I hope I've unraveled about the 4 main types of minor scale, how it's only the 6th and 7th that change, and highlighted a few of the most common contexts and what scale you would use when you're improvising. That's all we've got time for this week. I really hope you've enjoyed this explanation of minor scales, what they are, and when to use the right one. Don't forget, go and grab your free PDF, which is the minor scales cheat sheet, which has got the 4 scale types, and it's got the 5 contexts and which scale you use in those contexts. Really cool resource. There's a lot more stuff like this inside my Inner Circle membership, which I'm proudly brandishing my t-shirt off. You can use the link there to join the inner circle. If you have bought me a coffee, I appreciate it loads. And if you think these videos are good value, then you can use the link you can see there. Again, all these links are in the description as usual. And until next week, where I'll be clearing up more awesome questions and challenges you've always had playing saxophone, make sure you practice hard, practice smart, and enjoy your music. Take it easy. See you later. A major scale is just a major scale, right? Simple. A major scale is just a major scale, right? Simple. We all get it. Major scales, everybody knows it. Major scales, it's a no-brainer, right? Everybody understands a major scale. Major scales, everybody gets it. Piece of cake. Right,